Grady Vaugh, he was one of the old titans, kind of the Coweta community. The Masons and in the church, very outspoken.
Reverend Vaugh was a giant around Coweta County. He was an iconic figure. I mean, you saw Reverend Vaugh, you knew who he was.
Reverend Vaugh has had a lot of impact in the lives of a lot of people here in Newton.
My father was one of the biggest inspirations to me. At the age of 74, he completed his education by earning his GED, of which he was one of the speakers for the occasion.
Reverend Vaugh, hard worker, inspirational, very, very inspirational, giving. He's helped out a whole lot of people. He actually was going to be a part of our wedding many, many years ago, but just very, very giving, really, really talented person as well. Remember him just opening up his church for my husband, who is a member of the Masonic Lodge, opening up his church so that they could meet there at any time, no matter when it was. And anytime anybody wanted to do anything, if he could be of service, he would also help as well. And him building that church by hand was his best conversational piece ever.
I first met Reverend Vaugh when I became a free accepted Prince Hall Mason. It was the first face I saw him in past Master Cousin. And he said, keep on coming back, son. I know you don't see too many people, but just keep on coming. You cut out for this. I said, all right, we'll keep on coming. So I kept on coming. And later on in life, I looked up to this guy. He was like a mentor to me. He never told me nothing wrong. He always kept it positive. Said, if you do positive things will happen. If you think positive things will happen. Surround yourself around positive people. If the community ain't like you want it, figure it out and help it make it better. So that's what I did. I hung around that guy, man. I learned so much from him. Like my whole life was like a 180. Like here to here, like not the same, totally different. So he was a stand-up guy, man. Real stand-up guy.
I knew Reverend Vaugh well. Reverend Vaugh and my dad they were good friends, even before they started pastoring. Reverend Vaugh was AME, which was Methodist Episcopal, African Methodist Episcopal, and my dad was Baptist. So the stories that I hear is, again, back to the churches. The local churches were your high schools, were your schools. Reverend Vaugh went to a church here called Dent Chapel. That was his school. We have a schoolhouse on the yard of the church. And that's where he went to school, which was a Methodist church. And my dad grew up and went to Providence. Providence was a Baptist church, and that school was there. But they became friends. They became really close friends. Reverend Vaugh had a desire to build a church not located far from Saint Smyrna. It's probably less than a half mile. You could walk there from here. And my great uncle, Amos Russell, gave him property to build a church. And in honor of my uncle giving him the property, he named the church Russell Temple. So everybody always think, is that y'all family church, Russell Temple? And I was always asked that, coming up through. But it's actually not. The connection is that my uncle gave him the property, and he named the facility or the church after my uncle.
We moved over to the west side, and I developed a relationship with Reverend Vaugh. During the time, his church did not have a choir. So I, along with a lot of the other teenagers in the community, developed a choir. And so we went to our churches, and on the Sundays that we had church, and then we went to Russell Temple. And Reverend Vaugh taught us a lot. He taught me to have a lot of pride in myself. I can remember when I was getting ready to go to college, he sat me down like I was one of his daughters and talked to me about what things to expect, challenges, and how to handle those things.
Well, I've known Reverend Vaugh all my life, but he and my dad were real good friends, so I got to know him after I joined the lodge. We became real close. And he was a person that would give you the shirt. Now, I've heard the statement that his wife made one. He always said he wanted to buy a Lincoln Company. And his wife said, see, you're not going to do anything with it. She said, because everything you get, you give it to somebody. I said, that's his way. He'd give it to you sure off, but he never did. He had opportunity to do this thing that he wanted to do, but he'd always do them and do them for somebody else. Give them something. If I went over there, Reverend, I need $300. He said, well, he said, I ain't got it, I get it. And he make his way and get it. That's where he was. And I know as a personal friend, I told him, I said, Reverend, if you be the longest live, I said, I need you to do my you. That kind of thing. And we were just that close. And he did a lot of things by himself. He did a lot of work on the hall. And I would drive by there and he'd be there and I'd stop and when you call me and tell me, well, I just want to be alone. And he tear out, tore up the building and did everything. But he was a man that worked in the communities, around the civic, did a lot of civic stuff for people. Nowadays, people don't take that. Don't take no chance. They don't take, you telling them how to do stuff. Now, see, I'm not that old, but you can't talk to people now. They want to do it that way. And that wasn't Reverend Vaugh's style. He wanted to get together and we do this together.
You think you'd be walking around doing nothing, he like, wow, this family over here needs something. They got a young man over there, need guidance. What? So I'm like, okay, I gotta pick up this torch and carry it. So I went to the family, went to the parents, said, excuse me, man, no disrespect, but do you need anything? Like, yeah, I need somebody to get my son taken and get a haircut. So guess what Reverend Vaughn said? Reverend God needs a haircut. He said, tell you what we're gonna do. Every August before school, we're gonna do a back to school program. And guess what? We're gonna cut hair. So Reverend, I need you to find a barber. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta go find a barber. So I went to West Georgia, got a barber. Guy was in training for cutting hair. He brought not only one, but 2 barbers, and they cut hair. Each member, they only charged us $5. Each member paid $10, and we cut everybody's community hair for that school year. That's how we started our back to school program. He would say, progress starts with yourself. Evaluate yourself first before you talk about anybody else. And do not judge a person by what other people say. Find out for yourself. And you can learn a little bit of something from anybody, no matter who they are. So my advice, what I learned for today, I think it would be, take what you know and what others know and make yourself better, and then help somebody that you see that need help by not insulting, but just wrapping your arm around them, just making progress. One person in the community at a time. Yeah.
Reverend Vaughn got ready to get married and he needed a ride to the courthouse. So he called my dad up and my dad come pick him up and his wife-to-be and take them to the courthouse to get married. So their relationship started long before they ever even got into pastoring, and both of them ended up being local pastors. So Reverend Vaugh was I always call him the youngest old man I ever knew. Up until his death. Reverend Vaugh, I remember he was in his 70s and he was still real active. I mean, doing construction and, tending to, I think he's always had a garden, just real active, so he was one of the youngest old men that I ever knew. And he and my dad, they did Bible study together. Reverend Vaugh, in that same building, Russell Temple, it was told that he built the basement first. And then they start to have Bible study in the basement. So they had Bible study in the basement. And then he finished the sanctuary, which my dad helped him, Russell Sr., helped him complete the sanctuary. And then from there on, they formed a community group. And I don't even know that it was named, but they took care of the community. Then my dad, Reverend Russell Sr., Reverend Vaugh, my uncle, Deacon Edward Powell, another pioneer, Reverend Maddox, Reverend Melson, and others. Families would call them with needs, and they would consolidate their funds and help that family with whether it was food, bills, transportation. They would help them with our spiritual needs. They would help them with burials, and they formed that coalition. That probably was never named, but that was just what they did in the community.
Reverend Maddox, Reverend Jack Russell, Reverend Clinton Melson, Reverend Addie, Deacon Edward Powell, and others joined with Reverend Vaugh in carrying out what they felt God would have them do with all their love and strength. These men also rolled up their sleeves most Saturdays to help build Russell Temple AME Church. He pastored this church for 44 years and retired in 2004.
Reverend Vaugh was one of my favorite preachers locally in the community. I don't think that you will find many more like him. His example was stellar. He walked in true humility and genuineness. Reverend Vaugh was a giant, one who took time to pour into the least of them. One of the things that I will always remember about him is that when you saw Reverend Vaugh, you never saw a hair out of place. Reverend Vaugh always looked like a pastor. He always carried himself as a pastor. He always was a pastor. As a younger pastor, now serving in the same community that Reverend Vaugh built, it is very humbling to know some of the things that he's done and to hear some of the stories about his service. In today's climate, most pastors typically don't have enough time to service their own parishioners. It's difficult for pastors to visit their own sick and to, see about the members that they serve through their own church. But Reverend Vaugh somehow managed to not only serve the parishioners of his own congregation, but very often I would be in the hospital visiting friends and family members, and Reverend Vaugh would walk through the door, visiting the members of other churches or people who did not go to church without even being asked to. And that spoke to who he was as a statesman in the community, one who was vested, one who was concerned with the welfare of those who made up the community. Another interesting thing about Reverend Vaugh came to me by way of the wife of Reverend J.W. Russell Sr., who informed me that Reverend Vaugh, Reverend Melson, and I believe Mrs. Gwen Melson as well, shared some of this with me. That Reverend Vaugh, Reverend Russell, Reverend Melson, and I want to say Reverend Sutton, that the four of them would raise money amongst themselves from their own pocket so that when needs arose in the community, that they would not have to go through the bureaucracy of their own individual churches, but that they could address those needs themselves. And so when I think about that kind of effort and that kind of intentionality, it speaks to the character and the heart of the kind of man that he was. And as a young preacher and as a young husband, as a young father, I aspire daily to be just like him in that area. Last thing I think I should say about Rev is I remember him singing quite a few songs, but one of my favorite songs to hear him sing was I'll Go With Him Through the Garden. And so I'll never forget him. So many talks, so many conversations. He rode with me to the cemetery so very often. After doing eulogies, I've played the organ for him while he sang. And if I'm telling the truth in this moment, I miss him. I really do. Yeah, but I thank God for having known him. So long live him, long live his legacy. And we thank God that he was instrumental in founding a church that is still serving and praising God today, that will continue to praise God for generations to come.
Well, I would say, Reverend Vaugh, you've been my idol. I looked up to the man. And I would just say I appreciate you for showing me and leading me in the right direction, even though he was an AME member. And I'm partial Baptist. But he went to his church, I went to mine, but we walked along together. And that's the thing we got to do now, is don't knock denomination. You, as well as I, know that that's not going to save us. But the word is what's going to save us. And it's delivered differently from each pastor. But it all points to the same thing. That prize that we're looking for. And I would tell him that, Reverend Vaugh, I appreciate you. Godspeed to you. And he always tell me, brother cousin, I'm glad I'm looking at the green grass, not the weeds.
I said, Reverend Vaugh, your service was great. It was the size of a mustard seed, but it had flourished, have come a long way, and you still live within me no matter how long you have on this earth. You will still and always have a part of me, and I will have a part of you always inside of me, because you are what I call greatness. That's what I was saying. And he would always say when he leave, well, I tell you like I tell the tomato told the corn, I'll meet you in the soup.
I realized a long time ago that I was so much like him. I lived with him, I learned from him, I loved him. He took pride in us and the family. And one thing he wanted to do, he was proud of, was saving our souls. So I can't thank him enough for that and for the other things. He did not teach prejudice. He did not belittle anybody. He did whatever he could. And now people tell me, you're just like your daddy. And I'm proud of that. That's an honor to me to tell me that I'm just like my daddy, because my daddy was a wonderful man. So I'm proud of him.